On the continuous snow-capped mountains, Ragnar and his son sat on a cliff, looking down on all the peaks. After experiencing countless hardships, Ragnar had finally gone from a mere farmer to the king of the Vikings. Bjorn was already impatient to unleash his vengeance, to raid, to fight. Ragnar smiled slightly. He wanted to ask his son what the purpose of fighting was. After all,
power. The power of a king.
Ragnar uttered a maxim that he would remember for a lifetime. He had never thought about gaining any power, nor had he thought about becoming a king. What he wanted was only to lead the Vikings to a life of abundance. In this barren land, arable land was scarce and winters were long. It was difficult for people to be self-sufficient. So after the ice and snow melted, he planned to lead the Vikings to migrate to the vast and fertile land of England. After all, Egbert had once promised to give them 5,000 acres of land. As for the power Bjorn spoke of, as long as a person did enough for the people, the so-called power and status would come pouring in. In the blink of an eye, summer arrived. The people who intended to migrate were all preparing to set off for England. Lagertha returned to her territory. Before leaving, she handed over her land to her lover to manage. This lover's name was Kaf. During these days when Lagertha was widowed, it was Kaf who took care of her physical needs. But Lagertha never imagined that this one-time misplaced trust would make her lose her territory. At the same time, Bjorn's girlfriend Porin also wanted to go along and see the world. At this point, she was already pregnant. Fortunately, going to England was for farming, not for war. After failing to dissuade her, Bjorn had no choice but to reluctantly agree. Amid the people's reluctant gazes, dozens of ships loaded with farmers and warriors set off in a grand manner towards England. After dozens of days of tossing on the sea, everyone safely arrived at the Kingdom of Wessex in England. In front of the city gate, Egbert and Quenthrith had long been waiting, but Ragnar discovered a serious problem. The hundreds of Viking warriors he had left here were all gone. At the banquet, Ragnar got straight to the point and asked where the hundreds of Viking warriors had gone.
Unfortunately, the forces of my uncle and younger brother have prevailed. But if you, Ragnar Lothbrok, and you, Lagertha, would join with us, I am sure of victory.
Hvað segir hún?
Hún vill att vi börjar. En väg den fyra har lagt mig mycket.
Wir komum hingað til að byggja. Hon býr fyrir að fyrir skólum berja. Og deyja vegna deilið sem þeir okkar eiga.
Just as everyone was extremely angry, Egbert said hypocritically, "I promised to give you land," but it was met with opposition from some nobles. "If you don't help Quenthrith regain the throne of Mercia, I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to explain to the nobles on our side." The reason Egbert was helping Quenthrith was that he wanted Mercia to become his vassal state and pay in taxes every year. It must be said, Egbert's scheme was really beautiful. Without spending a single soldier, he took all the benefits. In order to gain a long-term and favorable cooperation, Ragnar had no choice but to agree to help Quenthrith regain the throne. After discussion, Lagertha took the farmers to cultivate the allocated land. As a person trusted by both kings, Athelstan stayed by Lagertha's side. The others followed Ragnar to Mercia to fight. At the same time, worried that the Vikings would take Mercia for themselves after conquering it, Egbert sent Ethelwulf to lead an army to go with them. With matters arranged, the group officially set off, divided into two routes. On the way, Ragnar asked Quenthrith to introduce her uncle. After all, knowing both yourself and the enemy would ensure victory in every battle.
My uncle's name is Britwulf, though he calls himself King Britwulf now. He has no right to do so. He has usurped my crown.
And your younger brother?
His name is Burgred. We were always close, and I love him.
And why does he fight against you?
My uncle has poisoned his mind or used some magic against him. We will soon be in Mercia, and you must fight for me. And if you are victorious, I promise that I shall give you something worth more than land or riches.
From Quenthrith's hungry eyes, it could be seen that she seemed unusually desirous of this man. Just then, countless arrows suddenly came flying towards them.
Throw him! Throw!
After withstanding the arrow barrage, Ragnar calmly observed the enemy situation. The number of people on the opposite side was several times theirs. If they fought head-on, there was no possibility of winning. Rollo suggested they turn back now while there was still time, but Ragnar seemed confident. He saw a huge flaw in the enemy's battle formation.
The forces on the right bank. much smaller than those on their left. And as far as I can see, there is no bridge. There is no way the two armies can easily rejoin. We attack your uncle. They'll stay out of our way. Sound the horn! Concentrate the full attack on the right bank! On steerboard!
Seeing all the ships heading towards Bright Wolf's side, Burgred started to panic on this side. He never expected the enemy to not follow the rules and only attack from one side. Burgred ordered his men to angrily shoot arrows at the enemy. Unfortunately, the arrows all landed in the water. At this time, the Viking warriors had already landed. They started crazily slaughtering the enemy. Seeing Bright Wolf's side in crisis, Burgred could only watch helplessly from this side. Before long, Ragnar had annihilated all the troops on Bright Wolf's side. While fleeing, Bright Wolf was personally beheaded by Floki. Seeing the situation was lost, Burgred had no choice but to lead his remaining troops and run. Seeing her own uncle killed, Quenthrith could no longer contain her inner ecstasy, but she seemed unsatisfied and even requested Ragnar to chop off Bright Wolf's head. Ragnar was quite puzzled. Why did she hate her own uncle so much? Quenthrith frowned angrily. For the first time, she told others about her tragic experience.
I was the only member of my family who raped me when I was a child. It was my uncle who first brought him to me. Since I was 6 years old, he abused me. He violated my body and my soul. And he told me not to resist the attentions of the many men that he brought to me, saying that they all wanted the pleasure. They all wanted the pleasure of sleeping with a child. And even when I cried and I said that they were hurting me, they didn't stop. Never stopped.
Ragnar was stunned, so he had Floki cut off Bright Wolf's head. Quenthrith took the head and drove a sharp blade into Bright Wolf's head. After revenge, their next target was Burgred. Across the river, seeing the slowly approaching warships, Burgred immediately ordered preparations for battle, but when they saw clearly the scene on the ships, everyone was shocked silly. They saw that every ship was hung with the heads of Mercian soldiers. Their mental defenses were instantly destroyed. Most of the soldiers turned and ran, fleeing in all directions. Quenthrith called out Burgred's name, hoping he wouldn't run away. She promised not to harm him, but the deputy advised Burgred not to believe the princess's words and to withdraw immediately to save his life. She had killed his brother and would kill him too. Just like that, Ragnar used powerful psychological tactics to scare the enemy into a panicked flight without spending a single soldier. But the Viking tradition was to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Of course, Ragnar wouldn't let Burgred off. After occupying the kingdom of Mercia, Ragnar ordered Ethelwulf to find out where the enemy had fled. Before long, Ethelwulf's pursuers caught a Mercian commander. Under Ethelwulf's friendly negotiation, the other party finally revealed Burgred's movements and deployment. Ethelwulf brought back news of the Mercian army. At this time, they were gathering on a mountaintop waiting for reinforcements. Ragnar immediately ordered the entire army to assemble and officially set off for the target mountaintop tomorrow to capture the enemy in one fell swoop. And during these days when Ragnar was fighting, what was our Lagertha doing? Her unique temperament deeply attracted Ecbert's attention, so Ecbert followed Lagertha to the fief. Seeing such vast and fertile land, Lagertha's heart was filled with joy. After everyone settled in, Ecbert began to frantically court Lagertha. He not only equipped them with production tools but also specially arranged a team of experts to guide their farming. Before he knew it, Ecbert had already stayed here for several days. But a country cannot be without a ruler for a day. So he planned to invite Lagertha to return to the capital together. Unexpectedly, Lagertha readily agreed. After returning to the capital, the relationship between them began to become subtle. Ecbert still launched a frenzied offensive towards Lagertha, even giving her a string of precious gemstone necklaces. And Judith also seemed quite interested in Athelstan. They talked about issues of religious belief. After the meal, Judith even expressed her love to Athelstan under the guise of confession. After staying here for a while, Lagertha prepared to return to the fief to continue farming. Athelstan also left with her. After seeing them off, Egbert asked Judith if she had already fallen in love with Athelstan.
Well, be careful, Judith, who you choose to be fascinated by.
Unexpectedly, Egbert actually encouraged Judith to boldly seek true love. At this time, Ragnar had already found the mountain where Burgred was hiding, but the enemy occupied the high ground, making it difficult for them to charge up. Just as Ragnar was at his wit's end, Thorstein, who had lost an arm in the previous battle, voluntarily stepped forward to attract the enemy's attention and buy time for his brothers to attack. Thorstein used his flesh and blood to withstand the cold arrows. Thorstein's actions left the enemy dumbfounded. After judging there was no threat, the enemy troops went forward to check. At this moment, Thorstein suddenly pulled out the broken arrow from his leg and stabbed it directly into the enemy's chest. In the end, Thorstein died heroically, his soul ascending to Valhalla. At the same time, Ragnar took advantage of the enemy's distraction and led everyone to charge up. They rushed to the enemy's front with lightning speed and engaged them in close combat. Close combat was the Vikings' natural advantage. They crazily slaughtered the helpless enemy. But because it was Porin's first battle and she was too reckless, she eventually fell into a passive position. Just as the enemy was about to kill Porin, fortunately Bjorn discovered it in time and saved her. At this point, Porin had already fainted. Bjorn was extremely anxious to seek help, but when he turned his head to look at the battlefield, another unfortunate event happened before his eyes. Ragnar, clutching his wound, finally fought his way to the top of the mountain. Only now did he discover that the true main force of Mercia had not yet taken action. Seeing Ragnar alone, Burgred thought victory was in hand, so Burgred immediately ordered a general attack. However, what Burgred didn't know was that Ragnar had long ordered Ethelwulf to lie in ambush on the mountaintop. When the soldiers beside him fell one after another, Burgred finally realized they had encountered an ambush. They tried to use shields to block, but it was already too late. Faced with indiscriminate shooting from all sides, Burgred's army had already become a turtle in a jar. With a fresh corpse falling in the wilderness, Burgred had no choice but to give up the resistance.
It's Burgred! It's the Hellsinger!
Although this war ended with Ragnar's victory, the ground was covered with the corpses of Vikings. Floki questioned Ragnar, "Can you tell me what the meaning of our fight was this time? We sacrificed so many brothers, and what did we get in return?"
You all chose to be here. My heart is as heavy for Thorstein as anyone's. But I'm sure that I will bump into him again soon. And in the meantime, Floki, shut your face.
On the other side, seeing the seriously injured Porin, Bjorn also felt very guilty. He said he shouldn't have let Porin face such a cruel battlefield. Ragnar originally wanted to comfort Bjorn, but when he learned that Porin was already pregnant, Ragnar instantly collapsed.
When you let her come, she will probably die, with your child in her belly, and it will be your fault. I can't believe you are my son. Can't even look at you.
The biggest beneficiary of this war was only Quenthrith. To save her brother's life, she brought Burgred to seek Ragnar's forgiveness. From Burgred's behavior, it could be seen that he was a very timid and cowardly person. He kept saying that he was encouraged by his uncle. At this time, Ragnar was in a rage and couldn't listen to this at all. So with a headbutt, he directly knocked Burgred down.
I forgive you.